Hey, welcome to the complete guide to Google Analytics 4. This video will summarize Chapter 6, which is setting up your GA4 property. And it was written by Search Discovery Zone, Mandy Johnston. So Mandy's an analytics engineer. She specializes in Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager. And she leads product support for the Google Analytics 360 customers. Before search discovery, she was in a variety of roles to help marketers use data to make decisions. So Mandy, welcome.
Hi.
Hi. So let's talk about setting up your GA4 property. The first thing that someone has to think about before they can even begin is what is the structure going to be for accounts, properties, sub-properties, roll-up properties, streams. And so I want to start there. I want to ask a very difficult question at times, which is how do you define a property? And what advice do you give to someone who needs to organize data across a bunch of websites and brands, and they're struggling with the best way to do this?
Yeah, so I think the best way to define a property is that it's a view of your data that represents a single brand or one customer experience. And that property stems off of your account. If a property represents a specific brand or user experience, if you don't have a complex structure, it might just be enough to look at one single property. But a lot of brands have more complex architecture. So, for brands that have a website and a mobile app, for example, that they share a similar user experience, they might want to take advantage of the data streams that are in GA4. And data streams allow data from both of those sources to roll up into one property and be analyzed together. So that's really convenient. Also, if you're a bigger company, you'll probably see a need to incorporate roll-up properties and sub-properties. And so both of those are only available for 360 customers. But I would say that roll-up properties and sub-properties are probably the most compelling reason across the board to upgrade to 360.
Yeah, just to get a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, exactly. And roll-up properties, they allow you to keep your properties independent. If you have multiple different brands, but you want to see your data at a high level as well. So those are super useful if you have multiple brands. And then on the flip side of things, sub-properties, which are pretty similar to views in Universal Analytics, although they have their differences, allow you to see a subset of your properties data.
Sort of like a view was in the past.
Yeah, very similar to views. So a lot of people utilize those, and those were available on the free version. Now that's only 360. So like I said, compelling reason to upgrade.
Yeah. So imagine that I have already made a decision. I've got 4 brands at my company, and some of them have apps. I've landed on 4 properties probably, with some of them having multiple streams. The first thing after that I'm going to probably need to think about, in my opinion, is going to be reporting identity. And I know that you talk about reporting identity in your article a little bit, but I'd love to just see if you could do a quick explanation of what it is and how someone might choose which option is best for their situation.
Yeah, so reporting identity is just basically how Google identifies your users. So GA4 has several different options that you can choose for reporting identity. A lot more diverse than Universal Analytics did. So like you said, I spell them all out in the article, but basically the different methods you can identify your users are by user ID, and that's just authenticating users who log into your site. Google Signals, which identifies users who have Google accounts, have enabled ads personalization. Device ID, which is how Universal Analytics mainly identified people, which is via the GA cookie, and then modeled. And that comes into play if you're using a consent management tool and have consent mode in place. So I think when it comes to making the decision, choosing one of the options, and they're kind of combined into different categories, which I outline in the chapter, but choosing one of the options that utilizes more than just the device cookie is a great start, because they're becoming more and more restricted as privacy laws come into place, and also you just can't identify users across different devices, and other methods can. So obviously those are more powerful.
Yeah. So if you're lucky enough to have users authenticating, there's really no downside to enabling user ID tracking,
Yeah.
I would think. Okay. So last question for you is, there's so many different options. There's a million different, things that you could modify when you're creating a new property. I'm curious to know if there are any important ones that stand out that you would say, these are the ones you definitely want to make sure that you're looking at every time you create a new GA4 property.
Yeah, definitely. There's a few. So Google Signals, I know I just mentioned that in the reporting identity options. That's a huge one, and it's new to GA4. And it's really important because it greatly affects how your users are identified, and it could be, probably one of the biggest advantages to using GA4, because you can see more users across devices. So that's a big one to look at.
And that's specifically if those users are authenticated to a Google account, right? Like,
yeah, so
Android
those are
phone or
yeah, if they have a Gmail account, and if they have ads personalization set on.
Okay.
Yep. And then another one would be your data retention settings. This determines your maximum look back window in your reporting for GA4. So the default for this is set to 2 months. So really important, because if you're going to be doing more analysis, 2 months isn't a whole lot. So if you want a bigger look back window, if you're going to be doing a lot of analysis in the user interface, that's a good one to address right off the bat and expand that data retention setting. And then also conversions. Those are probably going to be tied. Those are the new version of goals. So those are probably going to be tied to your Google ads. So you'll probably want to set up those right off the bat, just so you can get your ads tied into your tracking and optimize those. And then lastly, custom dimensions. This is an important one to address at the onset when you're creating your property. So custom dimensions or metrics are associated with the parameters that you're sending with your custom events. And it's important to start with a plan for these, especially if you're using the free version. You only get 50 custom dimensions. Or if you're collecting a lot of data points, even if you're using 360, you really want to make a plan for these and make sure that you can collect all the data that's important to your business and, fit them all into that limit that you get.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, well, that is setting up your GA4 property. Mandy, thank you for the time. I appreciate your insight in the chapter that you wrote.
Thanks.